right, very good morning. Thank you so much for continuing to stay on Daybreak. And of course, after that political discourse, we want to jump into what we do here. On Wednesdays, we'd like to talk about health and nutrition. You know, the nutrition part is always fun. We carry it forward also to tomorrow. But something that, of course, has come up, at least in discussions over the past week, is mental health, from alleged bullying in the workplace to suicide. People have been talking a lot about that, online. And I feel sometimes it's easier said than done, and sometimes it's some things get lost in translation, in fights, and who's right, who's wrong, etc. So they want to try to kind of crystallize some of those conversations. It's a broad topic, but we'll try to crystallize some of that. And we have a panel and an expert. So I guess I'll start with the expert, Your Majesty. Kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me, Willis.
Yes.
Grace Kashanja is my name, psychologist at Chiromo Hospital Group. Happy to be with you.
All right, thank you so much. And we'll go now to the panel. We'll start ladies first.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me, Willis. My name is Respa Waigiri. I'm a lawyer at Mahida and Minor Company Advocates, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Usionge kwanza, ladies first.
My name is Femata Muniafu. I'm a poet and I run a podcast.
What's the name of the podcast?
It's called Poetically Bubbly Closet Sessions.
Well, all right then. Sounds intense. You'll tell us. What is it about?
I basically talk about everything. So I recently did like episodes of mental health, just to create awareness, basically.
All right, awesome. Okay. Mana Baldamanti. Yes, introduce yourself.
My name is Teddy Otieno. I'm a journalist by profession, a radio presenter, Hot 96 FM. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
All right. And Wagwan.
Yeah, man. Wagwan, greetings in the name of the Most High. I go by the name of DJ Rev, Gabriel William Maunda.
All right. Karibu sana.
Hapo sana.
Karibu sana. And so I guess I'll start with the panel before I get to Grace here. I'll start with you, Femi. Since you said you've done a series on it. What prompted you to do it?
First of all, I have like a lot of friends who have gone through depression and trauma and all of this mental related illnesses, I would say. And
illnesses, that's correct? Okay, yes.
And I just wanted to maybe give them a place where they know they're safe, where we can discuss these things without being ashamed of them. And creating awareness is very important. Like a lot of times we do not talk about it. So I just needed people to understand that all humans do go through some things at some point in their life. So it's important for us to discuss it day in, day out.
Right.
Yes.
All right, and for you, Rispa, you say you're a lawyer by profession. So in the workplace as well, that's where most people, I think they don't talk about it because, of course, like we were saying yesterday, if you want to bring up my boss, and hypothetically, like my boss is causing me to have sort of mental breakdowns and all that, they're not sensitive, etc. People don't talk about it a lot, but it happens at the workplace as well.
Yeah.
What has been, your experience, yours or, your friends?
Well, lucky enough, I have been able, or I have been privileged enough to work in spaces where I have bosses who are understanding, who understand that your mental health comes first. Sometimes, like even for my current boss, it will get to a point where he can see that you're at the point of breaking down and he'll probably even ask you to take a break, you know? But unfortunately, I have had to talk to people who have had to go through situations where, even in their workplaces, especially if they're starting out in their careers, they get to experience a lot of hate, a lot of being toned down to not being their true self. And then that gets to genuinely, definitely trigger who they are, or how they get to reason, or how they get to be productive. So I actually have a podcast as well called the Two-Sided Coin Podcast. And I think the last episode I got to do was on mental health, men's mental health, because I have lost about 7 friends to suicide, and 4 of those are guys. Thank you. And 4 of those are guys. So I kind of felt like the space in which we are living in, we are not allowed to have our own mental serenity, mental peace, you know. So in the workplaces, you will get to see a lot of rants and a lot of people who are looking depressed, people who are looking like life is not going well for them, not because they don't want to, but because they get to experience very harsh, you know, bosses or even workmates, you know. So especially if you are in the is it called the interning or the ukiingia kazi? Yes, at that point when you're joining your career. So you get to meet people who've been there for 10 years, 5 years, and perhaps the reception they get to give you determines the state of your mental health as you push through work. So there are those who will probably make you feel like nothing, like you don't deserve it, like it's not your space, like nothing good comes out of your work, you know, and with that, it definitely triggers, why me? Is something wrong with my personality? Is it that I didn't get the skills right? Is it that they don't find me worthy? Is it my outside appearance? You know, because you know there are people who will just hate you
just for you, because you exist.
Because you exist, you know. So it is experienced everywhere. Workplaces are not the only places where people get to experience this, but I think a lot of this suppression is hidden in a lot of workspaces, and that's something that's a conversation that should probably be pushed over and over. And
just before I go to the rest, she's mentioned something there. Is there? She said some people walk around looking like they're depressed. Are there, for those women watching, are there some sort of, I don't know if I call them symptoms, or how can you tell? Because again, there are those who, we've read about those who, I think there's an actress, Regina King, lost her son to suicide 3 days after his birthday. One of the most happiest people in the world, Robin Williams, committed suicide. So is there a way that you can, back home also, rest in peace to DJ Lithium, but is there like a way you can tell, you know, for people that your friend or somebody is going through something? Because again, some people hide it a lot.
That's a very good question, actually, and it's very good that you've noted that sometimes we may see it in our workplaces, in how people are talking, in how they're walking. But sometimes you also have the flip side, where the person who you're interacting with or who you're working with within that space looks like a happy-go-lucky person. They're bubbly. Every single day they come to work and you'll never tell that something is wrong. Unless you really know the person, unless you really sit down and talk to them, is when you might know or you might identify there's something that's not okay here. So what are some of the symptoms that we actually look out for, especially now that you're talking about suicide or even depression? We look at changes in mood. And some of these are things that you can tell from the outside looking in, but others are someone who, when you look introspectively, is when you can be able to identify within yourself. You notice that your mood is low. You notice that it becomes a little bit more difficult for you to wake up in the morning, to get out of bed. It's a little bit, your appetite is fluctuating. Either you're eating too much or you're not eating at all. When you go to bed, sometimes it may take a while before you fall asleep. It may take a while, or even if you're able to fall asleep, you're sleeping too much. Getting out of bed becomes a lot more difficult. There's fatigue even when you've not done much. Your motivation for life, your motivation for things that are previously interesting, hanging out with your friends, going out, going to work, doing your podcasts for those who are creatives among us, that now starts feeling like work. A lot more effort. It feels like you need to try 10 times harder to do the things that previously used to just feel like they're normal, like everything is okay. And when you look at someone's perspective of life, they're hopeless. When you have conversations with them, they're no longer talking about the future, their goals, their ambitions. They're like, what's the point? Why do I need to do this? What's the point in doing life? And some of those are the things that you may even pick out when you're having conversations. You notice that someone used to plan, like, in the next 5 years, I want to be doing this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Suddenly they're like, and then what? What's the point? Everything is meaningless. And if you're cautious, that's now when you'll start seeing, like, they're working with a bit of a slump. They're not as bubbly. But they may also be in some spaces where they're masking it. So it becomes a lot more difficult, which I believe is why, especially within the workplace, within our friendships, it calls for us to be a lot more deliberate, a lot more intentional in our interactions, a lot more, how are you doing today? How are you
feeling? The one where you just ask, and that's
Kofiti life in Asia, you know? It's let's sit down. How are you doing today? You notice something is up with your friend, like, let's have a conversation.
Right, yeah.
Don't just procrastinate that coffee you've been calling and saying that Stopatana. Have that coffee, have that meeting, have that interaction. Take those extra 2 minutes with your friend, even at the workplace.
And one of the reasons why I asked Teddy to come through is because when I was personally going through my, we worked together at Hot 96, when I was going through my whole period where, again, like you said, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, but Teddy is one of the few people who would come and tell me, "Ay, bro, uko sawa kweli," you know? So I'll ask you, Teddy, how important is it to be that sensitive, you know, to your friends and your colleagues as well? Yeah.
Well, thank you, Willis. To begin with, allow me to say there is no health without mental health.
Right.
And just to pick up from that, it is important because mental health for me is more of a transition from your childhood. You remember you had your friends.
Yes.
You transited into school. From school, you transited into higher learning. From then, perhaps career. From then, you move on to other things in life, say marriage and whatnot. So if you're not able to merge this chain from the start to the end, it becomes a problem. And this is not anything that is specific to an individual,
right?
Say Willis. It is happening in our lives everywhere. We have losses in our families, you know. We lose even friends. The friends you lose and you feel like, this really hurt me, you know. And just going by that, it tells you that you need to be, you know, to have a third sense, yeah? Other than, other than the fundamental senses that we have that third eye, yeah, when you're hanging out with your friends, that one friend who's always very happy, the one who's making you guys laugh in that crew, you know. You're that friend for me, because we sit down with Willis, you laugh and laugh and laugh, but then it gets to a point you're like, no, Willis, let's take a walk and have this conversation. So for me, it's more or less a transition, yeah, that we need to link up. If you have those childhood trauma, go back to that child in you. Talk to that child and let that child see the adult that you are now, but at the same time, try to resolve some of the issues that that child might have. One of my favorite authors, Ryan Holiday, in his book, Stillness is Key, Ryan Holiday talks about having inner peace. And you know, inner peace will give you all the peace that you want in the world, you know, because from it stems a lot of decision making. From it stems a lot of relationships. From it, you get to express yourself even more. So go back to that child, you know. Go back to that childhood friend. Because with transition, you realize, we used to be told this in high school a lot, that once you leave this place, you'll not meet each other for the next 5 years. And we thought our principal was just talking about it, you know. But it's true. I think I've met about 3 or 4 since I cleared from Moi Forces Academy. And to be sincere, that transition alone, it opens up a wide gap even in your mind. And you know, that's where mental health starts. Yeah. So for me, it's very, very important. It's fundamental that we have this conversation.
Yeah. And I can call you Maunda. You know, Pia, the other thing is that youth, especially now, I guess probably because of social media, kuna pressure mingi. There's a lot of pressure. So how would you, well, first of all, what have you observed, just the way youth are handling and dealing with this pressure?
Hapo sawa. So first of all, I had science says that when 4 people are seated, one of them has mental issues. So I want to confirm if it's me. Mko sawa? Mko sawa?
Well, we are getting there.
So I think the youth, the tragedy of it all is that people treat the youth like children. The word youth is understood like children. So
sort of watoto wa siku hizi.
Watoto wa siku hizi. Sasa huyu amejipatia pressure za watoto wa siku hizi, unaona? So like, so somebody has the youth of young adults. So tuko na rent, watu wako na rent, people are in relationships, people are married, people have set goals, ambitions na vitu zingine kama hizo zote. So people have pressure ya life. People have targets at job. The same way the youth are being harassed, nini vitu kama hizo, kuna vitu mobs zinaendelea job, kama vitu kama discrimination. So I think people don't take the youth that seriously when it comes to issues of mental health, because hata ukitokea kwa familia yenu useme mimi niko na issues ama uonekane nikao uko na issues, unaitiwa, unaambiwa twende tupeleke kwa pastor. Unaona? Pastor akuombee. Ama unaitiwa anko yako hujaimuona in 10 years. Ndio nakuja anze kuongelesha, anaweza kuambia kijana, wewe uko na shida gani zinakusumbua, ni msichana ama unavuta bangi. So the youth are not given the seriousness that is deserved.
Right.
So I think youth are adults and have issues just like any other person. And actually majority of the youth are the people that are running this economy. So there's a lot of pressure, you know. So but the youth themselves, what actually is getting more of them into mental health issues is actually maybe competition. Kunaangalia vile best yako anaendelea na wewe umebaki nyuma. Unaona mazejo hapa unajipatia tu pressure nyingine mingi huko. Yeah, so but I think the youth are not handled as they should be. Yeah.
That's a big and I want to narrow it down because you Rispa, you mentioned something about you did your podcast and talked about men, right? And so why do you think that there is a lot of even the statistics I think show actually that most of the men are the ones who are, you know, we are losing men to suicide. Why do you think that is so? Just off the top of your head and from the experience.
Okay, so well, if you look at our time growing up, mimi ni mdogo by the way, si mistake yo our time. From the time we were growing up, a lot of attention was drawn to the girl child. So everything revolved around protect the girl child, protect. Like even if you're in a home where you're girls and boys, it is wrong for the girl to go outside at certain hours, the boy can just leave. You know, like a lot of concentration was placed on us as girl children. So what happened to the guys? Waliachiliwa. You know, no one is looking after them. They are imagined to be some sort of warriors in their own way. They will figure things out. And that is a very bad mentality to grow up with. I can imagine a dude who is probably 6 years, 7 years, having to start figuring out life at that time. What are you doing to the mental status of this person as a 6, 7 year old? You're literally telling them, I'm not giving you room to express your emotion, to feel your emotions. I want you to figure things out. So as they grow, it is in their minds. That's why unaonanga wanaume saizi, as grown as they are, even men your age, what will they say? They'll say things like, mimi ni mwanaume, sitalia, sitafanya nini, you know, I will handle things. So they bottle up a lot of issues. And then when it gets to the brim, it explodes. And that explosion, I think, is what now causes a lot of them to just decide, I cannot go beyond. You know, like, this is it. I have had enough. I have gone through everything. So having lost dude friends who, for a fact, by the way, were actually life of the parties, at first it really used to confuse me. But then later on, I came to understand it's the entire concept of how they were brought up with the whole mindset of I always have to figure things out by myself, you know. So I decided to talk about the men because it's time we create awareness. It's time we push the agenda that it's okay for you to be a man and not be a robot. Feel your emotions, have your feelings, cry if you must. Imagine it's okay. My guy friends will tell you, mi uambia, ikitaka kumwagika saa hii, wacha imwagike. It's allowed because this is the kind of toxic situation we are placing our men on. And then what happens when they die? You start saying, oh, you know, like a lot of unnecessary excuses that don't even add up. So I decided to talk about men specifically because I felt like I needed to make more of them understand it is okay for you to be in your feelings, to be in your emotions, to speak about situations, and the fact that you speak about them, you won't die. Like, how many have spoken and things have actually become better? You don't have to tell me your problem with it because I can solve it. Sometimes you just have to tell me your problem because it will feel less. Hata mimi, when I speak to someone about my issues, nasikianga, hiyo mzigo imepungua, you know. And then now from there, figure what next. So I decided to talk about men specifically because I want you all to understand it is okay for you to be in your feelings as a man, and you should not be put down for it. And that's the campaign and the championship that we should work and walk through. Because women are strong. Women and our emotions, sisi hata hatutakangi zitoke by the zinatokanga tu. You know? So it's different.
Yeah.
So for the men, I think we need to push that agenda really further and ensure that people understand you being a man is not, you know, we've made it like in this, especially in this country, we made it look like being a man is a lot, like as a man, me, I can't even imagine myself being a man. You have so much pressure to perform.
Thank you very much.
You have to take care of yourself and other people, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, that's good, yeah, cool, yeah. I know, I've been a man for long, I can tell you what she's saying. What she's saying is true. And that's what we want to ask. We're going to ask this question, just so that we get where you're at. Why don't men show emotions? SMS 22422, use the hashtag Daybreak. That's the question, as you can see there. Why don't men show emotions? Tell us if you're a man, if you're a woman who've experienced the men. Just let us know as we talk about mental health in general as well. And I guess I'll ask you that question first as we wait for what people are saying and their experiences. You know, as you deal with men, you know, in the psychology sessions, what's the pulse? What do you get?
It's a lot to do with what Rispaz just said. The way we have been brought up, the way our men have been brought up, where do you feel comfortable talking about your emotions? You know, who do you even listen to? If even your guy friends will go like, jikaze kimwanamme, you know?
Msichana tu.
Msichana tu. Akwambia, wewe achana na hizo feelings zako, kuja tuende tushike moja. Where do you actually feel okay to just speak? If you come home and you're speaking to your peros and they're like, so you're naongea nini? It is this young generation that is bringing up, people are all in their feelings, as you said. And that is actually what makes people not speak. And in as much as we say that it's primarily a male problem, it's also a female problem at times. Because yes, you have all these expectations left, right, and center as a youth. And then as a man, it's like you're a youth first, and then there's your masculinity there on top, and there's the expectations that hiyo sasa ndio itashikilia to help you deal with all these. So that lack of comfort, that lack of society just allowing us to just speak, and the lack of safe spaces as well. Because just a question still, if you saw your friend, your husband, your father cry, how would you feel? Would you be okay with like, it's okay for him to cry, it's okay for my boyfriend to cry, it's okay for my dad to cry, it's okay for my grandpa to cry? Or would you go like, haya, unalianga. What am I supposed to do with this emotion? You know, in as much as people are out there talking about it's okay to cry, it's okay to express your emotions, we also don't have the capacity to allow ourselves to just let men speak up, to talk about their weaknesses, to talk about their shortcomings. Because unbeknownst to us, we also have that bias. Somewhere at the back of your mind, you're also expecting this man in your life, these friends that you have, these colleagues that you have, to be macho.
Because of the way...
Because of the way we have been brought up. Yeah. So it's also not just about how they've been brought up, it's also how we've been brought up. So we also have that bias. So it also calls for us as the women in this man's life to be okay with the men in our lives speaking up. And for us to also create that safe space. That if your person comes and tells you, I'm struggling financially. If your person comes and tells you, I don't think we can do this. I'm not able to foot that bill. I can't take you on that date today. You know, I'm feeling depressed. I can't get out of bed in the morning. Tomorrow, when they tell you that, you won't come back and go like, sauna nisho, siwe tu ndio uliniambia uwezi nipeleka date juu sijui una do. Wanaume wengine wanapeleka mademu wengine dates. You know, sometimes we as women also spin it back on them. So once we create those safe spaces, we also need to maintain them long term. We also need to remove that internal bias we have within ourselves and understand that it's okay for men to feel. Even as we normalize men feeling, as we normalize men opening up and speaking about their information and about what they're going through, the Tufunguke campaign in itself. We as women, we as the people around, we as the other men surrounding these men, we also need to be okay with hearing a man say, by the way, in a struggle. We need to be okay with a man saying, I'm not having the easiest time. And our first response shouldn't be, let's go have a drink. It should be, okay, let's talk about it. I may not be able to sort you out, but I can listen. Sometimes all you need to do is listen. So bias, it goes both ways. Yeah. It's not just about you talking, it's also about me being okay with you talking. That's the only way this conversation on mental health is going to work. Not just for women, but for men too, and more so for men. Yeah.
Teddy, I guess when one of the things I hear men say also is that, and you've kind of alluded to it, is that nilifunguka, I talked to this person, and then it was used against me. So like if there's such a man who's probably watching, like how do you think, they should kind of go about something like that? Because then if the struggle is to open up, then you open up and then it's thrown back in your face. Yeah. What should I do?
Well, it happens more often than not. In a culture where gossip, it happens every time. Yeah. In a culture where gossip is just part of us.
Right.
I'd like, on the side, I talk about how, by the way, Lisa Liniambi ABCD.
As a conversation starter.
Yeah.
Or to be the man with the info.
It becomes, a chain reaction.
Yes, yes.
But then ideally it starts from the sender. Just as we have in the communication chain, the sender receiver model, it starts with the sender. From the sender, it moves through that chain. The message is passed, it gets to the receiver, it becomes an entire circle. So it starts from you, the person who's actually getting this information. It comes from a very soft spot. Yeah. And again, I'll mention my favorite author, Ryan Holiday, talks about this. It is in his books, like Ego is the Enemy, where he says that one, if you want to prosper, even as an individual, male or female, avoid gossips. Because with gossips, you fill yourself with very useless information. At the end of the day, you have so much to talk about others, other than think about yourself. So when will you even find that peace yourself? So for you to even go towards that path of what he calls eudaimonia, where you have that inner peace, you have to literally just culture yourself towards being more of a listener and a solution provider. Be a problem solver. Don't be part of the problem. You understand? So it also stems from the question of who you talk to. Just don't walk around and talk to anybody. Umefika pale kwa gate, unataka kuongea na mtu mwenye amesimama hapo nje. No, it doesn't work like that. Yeah, find a soft space, safe space for you. And, the best way to go about it is to seek therapy, go to a professional. And if that's a bit too difficult, then the closest person to you, could be family or friend, ask them how you can navigate through that. Because at times, even just solving an issue in your head is about taking that walk, You get to experience nature. Then indeed, if this bird can fly from this tree and perch on that other one, then it's made its journey and it's going back with, say, something small for the kids. Let me call them kids. Then for sure, if you leave your house in the morning and go to town and do a few things here and there, you'll come back. And you see, that's the way we need to connect with nature. So to answer that, Willis, in one line, is just to be careful with who you share your information with, find a safe space, and there's help out here. Yeah. Remember the other day I shared a thread on Twitter, and it talked about places where you can be able to access all these services. There's so many places, helplines available, and I'm sure the experts will talk about it. Yeah.
All right, we have some feedback before we go to the rest. We'll start with the SMSs, I guess. Tweets, okay. Let's look at what people are talking about on Twitter. Unaweza niwekea pale 24. That is John Mandela 1, anasema men were taught never to cry and hide their emotions. That's why in a crew you go for a drink, and to your surprise, after taking those, unashtuka mtu analia, so boycho anaumia in silence. Yes, sir. Yujo, I almost said ego. Yujo Chess. When you try to talk, utaambiwa wacha umama. This will cause more emotional damage. Pascal _ Wanjala, I only cry at funerals. That's where and when I combine all my problems and cry them out all at once. It's tough. Okelo Malimu, in order to kick out mental illness, the youth should be encouraged to share their tribulations with their confidence. This will relieve negative pressure resulting from stress. Calvin 1996, men do not express emotions because most of the ways through which emotions are supposed to be expressed, such as crying, is viewed as a sign of weakness. That is why men have decided to fake their emotions, because honesty has become a factor for judgment, mostly by ladies. Crystal Anaskoshie, being brought up in an environment where toxic masculinity is being praised, men then prefer repressing their emotions in order not to appear weak to their peers. All right, let's take a look at some of the SMSs as well. Nikua Vichongum, the bullying back in high school drowned our emotions. What I think Teddy talked about coming up and the traumas. Ikayo Brian, men don't show emotion because they don't want to show their weakness. You didn't leave your name. It's the judgment of the society. Many will see you as a lesser man, but it's true due to our traditions. Men stood up to do risky tasks. Dixon Jue, most people in the present day are always disturbed by the fact that their age mates are too much far ahead of them. This brings a lot of depression, causing even suicide. Some even don't like opening up to their problems to their friends because they fear that their friends will take their problems as a weakness. I think it's good if young people open up. They don't show up, Juvenile society in our treat. As ladies, we should be ready to listen and support the men. The society sees men as warriors, masculinity. That's why many men are experiencing gender-based violence and cannot talk publicly. We were never shown how to express and feel our emotions because what society made us believe is that mwanaume ni kujikaza. It is an evolutionary phenomenon. Emotional men are less likely to survive. All right. Men don't show emotion, but that's the wrong way, by killing themselves or others, but do so the wrong way. All right, so I guess that's the basis of what in Endelea. I'll ask you, Maona, before I go back to Femi. It looks like mayouth wameogopa kuongea, and it goes back to what you're talking about, being treated as adults. So what do you think is part of the solution for, I guess, both men and women? Because some have said, imagine, we laughed about it, but imagine bottling up everything you've gone through, and then crying only at a funeral, which we are hoping doesn't happen as often. So if you have, let's say, one funeral a year, for example, then it means for the whole year umekuwa tu bottle up. What do you think is the solution?
First of all, mwanaume kukuwa emotional. Ni kuwa emotional na mwenye gangster points. Ni kuwa vile hapo kwa hiyo feedback unamsema unaambiwa acha umama. Unaona?
Which I normally find very funny because these people have mothers, sisters.
Exactly.
And,
exactly. So I think how we've been conditioned and how we've been brought up ni kuoneshwa mwanaume ni kujikaza despite mambo mengi ina happen. We jikaze tu. Unaniget? So like mwanaume ni, like she said, the doctor said, you can call your girl and tell her, mi sina pesa ya date. Unaona? So mwanaume ni kubalance kusema hiyo sina pesa ya date na asubuko kwa hiyo relationship bado, because kuna vile unasema uachwe. So unaendelea kubala. So hiyo ndio mwanaume. So but I think and then also people have expressed na wakasema ati mambo ya ukibonga, when you share with somebody, then this becomes a good story. You squeeze, everybody is a walking blogger or a vlogger. Everybody wants to share something. I share with you something, and then on the internet, word by word vile imesemwa, vile nilikuambia
ama wanatumia subliminal.
Exactly. Wameitumia hivyo. Ama niende niambie pastor, and then I become the subject
of the next sermon.
Of the next sermon.
Right.
So unabidi unyamaze. So one of the best solutions would have been like professionally now going to see a psychologist, you book a therapy session. But I remember one of the challenges that we have is that like in DJ Lithium, RIP. So he in one of his earlier tweets, he had complained that the therapy is expensive. He said 6,500 for a session. That was a bit too expensive. So I think the solutions will be one of the things, just be sensitive with each other, how you treat the other person. People are very toxic out here, you get, and then also let's not prescribe one solution to every problem. Mi umekaa umenipata niko na issue, nimekaa chini na nimekwambia shida yangu ni rent, nijaribu munisort, ama mkae chini muongele, atafadhali mkiniongelelea lakini mmenisort rent. It's not every time unanipatia advice. Unaona? So if I've come to you na I have relationship issues and we talk, you see, don't go gossip. We look for how maybe it's my girlfriend or my wife. Endo ukae chini na yeye muulize umse ni aje bridging, because maybe I don't want to go emotional ama I don't want to seem weak. So nianze kusimp. Then when you show out emotions out there, unaitwa simp. Wacha kusimp Buddha. Yeah. So I think professional would be the best. And then people being sensitive. Yeah, people being sensitive. And then people don't understand that people are very toxic out here. That you're too toxic. Mtu amekuja na shida, instead of kumsaidia unamwambia hiyo kumwambia wacha umama. That's being toxic and that's being insensitive. Hiyo nikikuja nikwambia shida yangu uende ukanigossip, that's being toxic. So people should just stop being toxic. People should start being sensitive with each other. Yeah, as in view the other person's problems as yours. And then we should start prescribing the same solution to every problem. Ni advice. Yeah, see advice. If you're not a professional, stop giving this advice. Ukikuja nipande mimi niko na shida ya job, nitafutie job. Abo nishikanisha na msi yako na job. Lakini wacha kunipatia
in the meantime.
In the
meantime, between time. Yeah. Femi, as you are talking, as you're doing the series of podcasts as well, what are some of the issues that maybe came up for you that you picked and were like, all right, that's sort of like a aha moment, or the feedback that you got?
Okay, so I decided to start by looking at myself.
Okay.
So I decided to talk about trauma. I did an episode on suicide. I did an episode on depression. And I did an episode on anxiety. So these are things that, especially like anxiety, I personally have anxiety, like serious anxiety. So I had to sit myself down, like literally on my podcast, it's like talking to myself and bringing myself to this space where I'm able to talk about things that I don't normally share with anyone. So it was an open space to finally be me. So I talked about how I have dealt with my anxiety. I talked about how it is very important to be kind to yourself and to be very intentional with the things that you say, with the things that you do, with the friendships, with the relationships, and everything in general. Because a lot of times I find myself saying things to maybe even someone, a partner, and they ghost me because you're too emotional.
So the saying things is opening up?
Yeah, opening up, okay. Yeah. You're too emotional, they can't deal with you, they don't understand. And maybe you go to meet someone for the first time, and I have like an anxiety attack, and someone's telling you, calm down. It's not helping me to tell me to calm down. Right. Just give me time to express myself, time to get to know you. You know, like being a stranger is already hard for me to deal with you. So just give me time to open up and all of that. And then I talked about depression because I hear a lot of people talk about how they went through something and they didn't know how to express it. So it gave me an aha moment, as you said, to think about like, okay, how would I go about it? How would I talk about it? And I talked about suicide, which was the hardest. Like after I did that, I had to like take a break from the podcast because I didn't even script that episode myself. I had a friend of mine do it for me. And it felt like I was talking about myself doing it. And it was very emotional. So I just couldn't deal with it. And after that, I couldn't continue with that series because I was just like, these things are hard to open up about.
Hopefully you'll talk to Grace after this as well. So Teddy, before we let you go, because I know you got to go and do the news, maybe your parting shot in terms of dealing with mental health, and also just off of what Femi has said. As much as she got to a point where she stopped, but she was bold enough to share her experience with other people. So what would you say to that in the way, as a way of dealing and being aware of yourself?
All right. One, I'd like to put it out as such, that one, let's stop really thinking about outputs, you know, male, female, especially the men. Stop thinking about outputs, that I have fees, I have rent, I have loans, I have whatnot, you know, because that's, when you wake up, that's the first thing you think about, outputs. View life as a process, that today I have this, tomorrow I'll get to another level. As a young man growing up, you know that today it's KCSE, tomorrow I'll be in campus. Don't try jump the gun, you know. Take life as a process. It gets to a point where, Willis, you realize that someone has decided to, say, quit school. Why? Because they want to get into employment, you know. But you know, you can't get formal employment without that, not unless you're too talented in a certain field. So just take life as a process, one step at a time, and that you'll actually get there in the end. And to, you know, my parting shot would be wise. Your mental health is very important, you know, and there is no health without mental health. Yeah. All
right, so in case you see Teddy has disappeared, he's going to do the news on Hot 96, but he'll be back, and we're also just about to wrap up as well. So, Grace, having had, you know, most of all of this, you know, how does one really have, because people have also talked about trauma. How do you deal with the trauma? How do you even know that ishida yangu ina emanate uko? The way my dad used to talk to me, my mom, or what somebody did to me when I was a child. And then also, how do you, number two, how do you talk yourself through some of these things?
That is very interesting, very deep, and the conversation on trauma is not one that can just be had here.
Right.
But a lot of the things that we go through, yes, they are impacted. Something Teddy said in the beginning is that your childhood affects your teenagehood, affects your early youth, affects your adulthood, affects even your old age. So as you grow older, the things that you've gone through, the experiences that you've had, impact on how you relate with everything that comes after that. Yeah. So say if you are bullied in primary school, that's likely to affect how you make friends, how you interact with people in high school. That is also likely to spill over. If during that space you don't come to terms with the fact that, yes, I was bullied, that affected me in this and this way, and then maybe learn how to make friends easily, maybe not get bullied when you're in high school. As you come into campus, it might be a little bit easier for you to make friends than it was when you went into high school. But within that space, if you're not able to deal with that and come to terms with that, it becomes a bit more difficult. Yeah. But if you're able to process that and make new friends, then life becomes a lot easier. It becomes a lot more possible to have healthy relationships within that space. But if, say, even within that space, you do now get into a space where you're in an abusive relationship, so you go through one form of trauma or the other, lose a loved one, lose a friend, go through depression, that now affects the next stage of life. For some people, they are more present, more aware of the experiences that they've had, and those are affecting their day-to-day experiences. For others, they may not be even aware that I have difficulty making friends now because maybe I was bullied. Some, because their brain was trying to protect them, have suppressed those emotions, those experiences. But when we go through therapy, and this is why it is important to go through therapy, not because you're going through depression, but because you're a human being and you need a safe space to process your experiences. Even if you've had a good day, you need to go and tell someone, you know what, I had a really good day today. I've had a really good week. I think things are really looking up finally. We need a therapist. Everyone needs someone who they can talk to in a safe space. And during therapy, as you go through therapy, as you go through counseling, you're able to now build that thing that we call insight, that sense of awareness that I have a difficulty making friends, maybe because I don't know, I was bullied, maybe because I don't feel good enough, maybe because I have a low self-esteem, maybe because I find myself comparing myself to other people a lot more often, and all those are affecting how I make friends. You need to go speak to someone through therapy. You can be able to understand, I'm feeling this low mood, I'm going through depression, I'm feeling quite sad, because maybe within my friendships I don't feel heard. You know, I am drinking as much as I'm drinking because I do not feel like I'm experiencing job satisfaction. I'm having a really difficult time at school because I'm not able to concentrate in class, you know? Because mental health is not just depression, it's not just anxiety, it's not just trauma, it's a lot of other things. Mental health touches on how I interact with you as my friends, how I interact with you as Willis. And all those interactions do affect how how my day is going to be. If I had a really bad day at work yesterday, if I wasn't able to do my duties as I was, then today I'll probably come into the office and I'll be anxious, you know? So it affects all aspects of life, and all of us get affected one way or the other. Yeah.
All right, well, unfortunately we're out of time, but we'll definitely have to have this conversation again, hopefully to get a part 2 of it. And I'll probably invite all of you back again, because I feel like there's some other things we did not touch as well. But I'd like to say a big thank you for coming through. Hopefully we can do this again next Wednesday, you know, because I think there's so much, even just from the feedback, that we still need to touch on. But very briefly, where do I drop a little Kopata? Why I say get a radio and thing.
Yeah, man.
What's the name of your podcast and where can guys find it?
My podcast is called The Two-Sided Coin. I host it both on Anchor and Spotify. You can find me on Instagram at @I am_Waigiri.
All right.
Yeah.
My podcast is called Poetically Bubbly, Closet Sessions. I host it on Anchor. It's on Spotify as well and Apple Podcasts. My Instagram is bubblypoet_Afrique.
All right.
Or 96 Kila Sato, Sports Arena alongside John Kianda.
You have to know that.
Yeah, man. And social media handles DJRave_Mixmaster across all platforms. But my parting shot is be very deliberate about your environment.
Okay.
What do you choose? What are you bringing in your space? Be very deliberate about it. If you have toxic people in your environment, hata kama ni family, cut them out. Na usifeel
okay, sorry. Now I'm your time, but where can guys find you just in case they need the help?
If you need help, kindly feel free to reach out to us at Chiromo Hospital Group on all accounts, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever it is that you're at. Also, you can call us on our toll-free number 220-000. Sorry, on our toll-free number 0800-220-000. I repeat, 0800-220-000. Anytime, reach out, speak to a therapist. If you'd like to come in for a session, you can also book a session. Talk about it. Talk about our mental health to Funguke.
All right, well, I hope that everything is going to be okay. You know, I was thinking of how to end this, and I was going to say, don't give up, don't do this. And you've been told a lot of things you should not do, but what I think you should do is just have a positive outlook on life. Things will get better. Every problem has an expiry date. And like I say, look at yourself in the mirror and be kind to that person. I know that successful people look like you. Peace and love. We'll see you again next